Sue Bird, she is retiring from basketball, the swan song, and Megan Rapinoe. They have dated for a while, I believe. Are they officially married at this point?
I'm trying to look that up. They got engaged in 2020.
Okay.
So I'm trying to see if they are married or not.
Still a couple, though.
Yes,
we
still
can
together.
say that.
There's been no conscious, uncoupling? What is it that...
breakup?
No, what is it that Gwyneth Paltrow? Conscious uncoupling is what her and Brad Pitt went through at some point, and others, right? Whatever they call it.
So Megan Rapinoe, in a speech at the ceremonies for Sue Bird, claims that Sue Bird may be, and she uses the quote, arguably the greatest athletes in history for any sport. Yes, that's what Rapinoe is saying. Now, when I see this versus read it, I'm thinking, is it expected as, happy wife, happy life, that you have to go over the top in awe of what was such a long and dominant career? Because Twitter had a field day with this, social media responding to Rapinoe's quote on Sue Bird, saying, congratulations on arguably the best career that anyone has ever had in the history of any sport ever. I mean, when you hear this, you're kind of like, well, I mean, is this like the guy who's got to say something nice at the speech, to the way he's not going to hear about it on the drive home? Do you think it was warranted based on the relationship, or is this and the backlash that was received on social, which a lot of it is hilarious? I'm guessing that's also warranted too.
Well, this is like, let's go to LeBron James' wife to have her weigh in on the LeBron versus Michael debate.
That's what it is.
Mrs. James, Savannah James, what do you think? I think my husband arguably has had the best career of anyone in NBA history. This is not exactly an impartial mediator that we're talking to. It's the woman's wife, partner. I still cannot find if they're technically married right now or not, but they got engaged in 2020. So I don't really care what the spouse of someone says about their career in regards to its historical context. But let me give you a stat line. 11.7 points, 5.6 assists, and 2.5 rebounds in 580 career games. She averaged less than 12 points per game over the course of her career. I think most of you watching are pretty familiar with the game of basketball. That's not a lot. There's no argument here. She's not arguably the best at anything. She's not arguably the best women's basketball player of all time, much less of every sport out there, men's basketball included, and everyone else. Megan Rapinoe also, who will not step up and say that biological women should compete against biological women, maybe should think about the context of that if Sue Bird had to compete against men who identified as women that then played against her in the WNBA. Her point total may have gone down from 11.7 points per game to 0 points per game because she would not have had a career. So also think about that and what's happening is what I would tell Megan Rapinoe. This is a ridiculous argument made by someone who has no impartiality on this. It is their lover they're discussing, and it's a ridiculous statement that I am thrilled that most of the internet has completely bashed from start to finish the moment she made this claim, because it is an absurd statement.
Absurd, but I also think it is kind of tongue-in-cheek. I mean, she's averaging. She's averaging Marcus Smart numbers. That was pointed out on social media.
11.7 points per game.
You want to go through the stat lines. I mean, again, the headline leaves out arguably, as if it's some definitive statement. I think it was more. I better say this. I better put this. Arguably the best career ever. Congrats, babe.
Congratulations on arguably the best career that anyone has ever had in the history of any sport ever. Yeah. May have been also a bit of a joke. I do like the person who says, doesn't even have the greatest career for a player with the last name Bird. And a picture of Larry Bird holding up the Larry O'Brien trophy.
Someone said don't disrespect Brady like that, and much more.
But hey, she got a headline.
Sure.
I mean, honestly, part of me, has to tip my cap a little bit, because are we talking about Sue Bird being honored by the Seattle Storm?
No.
On today's show? If she doesn't say that?
Chad, we're talking more WNBA when we were at football today. I mean, come on.
I mean, Megan Rapinoe, you did it. You got us to talk WNBA.
WNBA and trans, baby.
Congrats. You got us to talk WNBA. Well done. Just by saying that one statement.
Yes. I'm not a big fan of John Sterling and the over-the-top calls, mainly because it's so forced and rehearsed. You can tell it's rehearsed based on who hits the homer. But, man, do I have a newfound respect for John Sterling at 84 years old. Justin Turner fouled off a pitch that came up into the Yankees radio booth and hit Sterling in the head during the middle of the at-bat on a 3-2 count.
And now the 3-2 swung on, a pop foul back here. Ow! 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 It really hit me. I didn't know it was coming back that far. So once again, it'll be a 3-2. And Holmes ready to deal. A ground ball to third. Donaldson squares, throws to first in time. Ball game over.
Great
Yankees win. The Yankees win. You know, that foul ball actually hit me. It kind of glanced off my forehead. So I took one for the team.
Okay, John. My best driver of the game is Kyle Higashioka, who wants to know if you're all right. Are you okay, John?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
I am okay. Just a glancing blow.
Just a glancing blow.
I mean, he's bandaged up.
He knows how to play
after
hurt.
this.
He knows how to play hurt after taking a shot with a bat.
He had missed like 20 games or something
game.
recently, too. He at one point, I believe, Chad, he had called 5,000 consecutive games in a row without missing a game.
That's impressive.
Didn't you? Did you meet him in Atlanta?
I have a great John Sterling story. But first off, well done. Glad that he's okay for taking the shot with a bat and continue to go. He is a little bit over the top. He is a little bit like old-timey, baseball announcer guy for me with some of the things that he does. I do love the hand gesture on the Yankees win. He gives a big fist bump at the end of it, which was cool to see. So John Sterling, this is probably 2009, 2010, working at Atlanta Braves game with a radio show I'm a part of, and he is a guest on our show. And this is probably mid-July in Atlanta at the old Turner Field. It is 97 degrees with a heat index of the sun on this day. And this interview's at probably 3:30 in the afternoon. John Sterling comes down on time, which I appreciate, to do this interview.
Right on time.
We are in the concourse, but it's the outside part of the concourse. There is just sun beating down on us. No escaping the sun on this day. This man is in a black pinstripe full suit, buttoned up, and he is barely sweating. I mean, his head, you can see on his brow, he's got some sweat, but barely sweating, full suit. And he comes and sits down, and I tell him we've got about 3 or 4 minutes before the interview goes live. And John Sterling just breaks out a book. He's got the latest science fiction novel that he's reading, and he's just reading the book. He's not reading stats. He's not looking at his phone. He's not going through anything. He just carried a book in his coat pocket and pulls it out for moments like this when he has 3 minutes. And he just sat and read and didn't speak. And then when it's time for the interview, put the book down, put it back in his jacket, and started the interview. I was, quite frankly, impressed. Not impressed with some of the theatrics that he does, but I was impressed that day. And Hutton, I'm impressed once again after he took the shot with the baseball bat in the head.
And then he picks right back up and
he's ready to go.
Has the final call. It's not like it's the middle of the sixth. You know?
Right there at the end of the game.
I believe Justin Turner signed a baseball and sent it to him.
I am curious would he have finished if it happened in the third inning.
He said
he knew it was almost over then.
He's calling the very next game.
Yeah.
He was right back in it.
Well done.
He was shocked, though. I mean, I would be, too.
Oh, it hit me.
Because you're watching different things on the diamond, on the foul tip, to see what's going on, right? And then you get hit in the face with a baseball.
It's never what you're expecting. You can watch the game and see a foul ball.
Yeah.
But when a bat is shattered and breaks off into the stands, that's what you're not looking for.
Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, the best of teammates. Zach Wilson grew up his favorite player growing up playing football was Aaron Rodgers. Here's Wilson now, the backup in New York for the Jets, on what it's like being teammates with A-Rod.
The trade was going to happen. What was your initial reaction? How did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I would like to be the guy. So, at first, you're not always happy about that. But, I'm extremely psyched that out of any quarterback we could have brought in, it was him, And I had been talking with him, this offseason. I was with him, early in the offseason before any of this kind of was even getting talked about. And so we got to spend some time together. And it was really cool to kind of see how it all went together. And, I have to look at kind of where I'm at as a quarterback and how I can look to be the best I can be. And I do think this could be a big part of it. I think what he brings to the table, what Coach Hack and Downing bring to the table could be really good for me in my development and then this offense, of course, too.
I like how Wilson's approaching this. He has no choice. But, it is interesting that based on comments he made last year following a loss, that he didn't think like the offense was holding the defense back. He lost a lot of respect in the locker room. I thought the Jets would move on from him. It's been the opposite. And honestly, it's kind of the opposite feel that we had for Rodgers and Jordan Love versus Rodgers and Zach Wilson. But Wilson did say, like, hey, if they bring a veteran in here, I'm going to make their life a living hell. Here's what Rodgers had to say about how he's been teammates with Wilson so far.
Handle that, and what have you seen from his approach?
Yeah, he's been incredible. He hasn't made my life hell every day.
Yeah, certainly not.
Yeah, he kept receipts on that statement is what I take from that also with Aaron Rodgers.
All of a sudden,
and a tongue-in-cheek comment. Now, Wilson, I like how he's handling this. He still comes across to me as childlike, especially in comparison to Aaron Rodgers. And he's so much younger. I understand that, but even with the lack of accountability last year, he's just always, and maybe he figures it out and has a great career. He comes across as a little 12-year-old boyish to me in how he addresses people and everything about him.
Well, and all of a sudden, Rodgers is coming off like a great teammate. I know it's mandatory minicamp, but he was showing up right after he was signed. And he wasn't doing that a year ago in Green Bay. And it's, for all the discussion about the New York media, Chad, have you seen anything as far as negative headlines and how Rodgers has approached this? If this were last year compared to this year, that would be all of the talk.
No, and I think there's two different things here. I don't know that Rodgers has ever been cast as a bad teammate. Guys who play with him love him. His offensive linemen love him. He's got close relationships with guys he's played with. But even, last year with but that situation wasn't about Christian Watson. It was about his disdain for the organization. Aaron Rodgers is not a bad teammate. Aaron Rodgers is a bad employee. There's a difference between the two. I think that's how he's been cast, is everything he's done to not show up or not respond to calls or text has all been about his disdain for the Green Bay Packers management under Brian Gutekunst after he was not informed about the drafting of Jordan Love. When that moment happened, their relationship was forever broken. And he played through it, and he showed up when he had to, and he went out and won an MVP after that also. Didn't win a Super Bowl, though. So I think, did he get two of them after the
back-to-back
after the drafting of it? I thought he had one, then got one more after Jordan Love was drafted. But regardless, I think it's more about him being a bad employee than a bad teammate. So now that he's in lockstep with his new organization and his bosses, he's back to looking like a good everything again. Good teammate, good employee.
Yeah, but I think that the criticism would be, he's talking about winning MVPs in New York and not Super Bowls, right? But he said that now. But he's like, can I go win an MVP again? Yeah, I can. The immediate response was, the Brady's talking about titles, not $50 million. And I think that was the rub in Green Bay.
That is going to be the rub on him if he doesn't win one more. I mean, if he only wins the one title early in his career as a starter, that's always going to be the criticism. I believe Aaron Rodgers is so smart that when he says things like this, he's already setting up his defense. And here's what I mean by that. He knows that if he doesn't go to New York and win a Super Bowl, he's going to be deemed a failure to have that level of talent, only win one Super Bowl. So when he says, could I win MVP again? Yes, he's not talking about titles, because years from now, he's going to be saying, I can't win a title on my own. I can control myself. I was good enough to win 3 MVPs or 4 MVPs or whatever it was, but everything around me with the organization is out of my control. Tom Brady's so different because he was raised in a culture of championships from the very first time he stepped on the field with the Patriots, so it was always a little bit different for him. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying in his mind, this is the ultimate defense of his legacy and career, is saying the MVPs are under my control. Super Bowl rings aren't always under my control based on everything around me.
There was a recent report that the Memphis Tigers could be on a list for the Big 12 as far as vetting programs and universities to potentially join the conference whenever it decides to expand again. And the talk is it's coming from the Pac-12. But, Chad, there are ways to deny a report, and then there are ways to just slam the door shut. And Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, did just that in regards to any rumor that the Big 12 was considering Memphis as one of the possible additions to the Power 5 and specifically the Big 12. Where Pete Thamel tweeted out on Friday, just spoke to Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark about the multiple reports that the Big 12 has met with Memphis. Quote, I've never met with anyone at Memphis about adding them to the Big 12, nor have I been on campus. Meaning, we're not interested, unless they are. But I think this is more about making sure that the top universities in the Pac-12 know there is priority, and then there's nothing else on what we're looking to add. If I'm Memphis, I absolutely leak this out. I want to be mentioned.
Yeah.
But the Big 12 doesn't gain anything by having Memphis mentioned with the schools that they're currently trying to recruit, like Colorado, Arizona, Utah, Arizona State, and others, that would make a ton of sense for the Big 12 for where they sit currently.
I think Memphis has always been one of those programs and how they're covered by the media. It's a very defensive program.
Yes.
They're very defensive about their place in the larger sports landscape. They're defensive about their place as a major American city. Always defensive. And I do think that the writers and media members that cover that market and cover that program take on that level of defensiveness about what Memphis is and what the Memphis Tigers program is currently and could be and should be. And this, to me, is another one of those types of stories that they are quick to buy into the Big 12, wanting to add Memphis, because they are damn certain that Memphis deserves better than what they're currently getting and is more big time than they actually are. And they should be more big time in the eyes of major conferences. And this is Brett Yormark coming out and saying, you're nothing.
Well,
you're not big time to the Big 12 right now. And that hurts if you're someone who covers that program or attached to that program.
Yeah, but doesn't it also make sense, given the fact that the Big 12 is adding Cincinnati and Houston and UCF and BYU? Especially the first three I mentioned, Houston and Cincinnati, for instance. Memphis has always been in lockstep in many ways with what they've done athletically.
Yeah, it's the old Metro Conference.
Yeah, so whenever you see Memphis, you're like, oh, well, I mean, Cincinnati and Houston are there.
To me, the dream died when they weren't one of those teams. When it was UCF and not them, and not the old school Metro Conference of Houston, Cincinnati, Memphis, I'm not believing that they're going to be mentioned alongside Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah.
No. But
I think someone bought into that.
This is the leak in order to get mentioned again.
Yeah.
Alongside the likes of Cincinnati
and I'm not
Houston.
saying it'll never happen. I'm just saying that to me it feels like that part of the dream dies with when they added those other teams. Here's the other thing too. They're talking about basketball only, additions.
Yeah. Like
Gonzaga being a part of it. And there's not a lot of mention of Memphis with that either. And that's got to be disheartening if you're a Memphis fan. I get it.
Was that just because that Gonzaga doesn't have football?
Well, Gonzaga, UConn are two that I've seen that the Big 12 wants to add. But those are obviously Gonzaga doesn't have football at all.
Right.
But UConn, you're still adding for basketball and not football.
That would be the reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, Memphis.
But football's the driver.
Penny Hardaway should have that. The brand should be associated if it's basketball only.
Memphis is a basketball edition too.
Obtain. Yes.